us.
Okay, continue.
Hello, Sajid. How are you?
Hello, Nizam. I'm very, very well. How are you?
I'm fine too, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to interview you.
Thank you too. I'm looking forward to this, and already I can sense a beautiful energy, within this sort of just communion between the two of us. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Sajid. Okay, so friends, we have Sajid Shafi here. So he has been not a typical child. Why, I'll tell you, because from the age of 11-year-old, he was passionate about exploring the workings of the human being in all its dimensions from the 11 years old guy.
Mhm.
So just please make a note of it. So his interest grew in gross physical through to the most subtle energetic levels, which we can call spiritual. As a result, formal studies have been centered around anatomy, physiology, psychology, and the metaphysical, including a bachelor's honor degree in human anatomy and physiology. That's a lovely degree, Sajid.
Mm, mhm.
And then, with his experience, he worked in Coca Cola, Mars, Associated British Food, etc., etc., etc. You will not be believing that seeing Sajid, he has 22 years old of experience to 44 years old people has worked with and all that. Finally, finally, he landed with something called Find the Gap. He also explored meditations, physical exercises, yoga, nutrition. Man, like you, did you spare
Mhm.
anything, Sajid? So, okay. See, what I understand is, Sajid, here is this 11-year-old guy who grew up
Mhm.
with gross to subtle interest
Mhm.
and ended up having this human anatomy and physiology degree and then works in different
Mhm.
uh, companies and including Coca Cola. That's interesting.
Mhm.
And here again, on a contrast, you have explored yoga, nutrition, physical exercises.
Yes.
And please tell me about your journey. What pulled you into exploring this gross to subtle?
Well, I think just going back to my childhood, and I remember, I just recall walking back home
Okay.
each sort of afternoon after school. And all I recall is are the questions in my mind about the world, about
Oh,
us. And this was this young, 11, 12, 13-year-old. Yeah, I may have played football or something, and then after football, walk back on my own, good long journey of around 45 minutes to an hour to get home. And I had that time to think every single day. And it was just constant questions about life in general. And I
wow.
didn't know it was normal or abnormal as a 11, 12, 13-year-old. You don't really know. You don't really share with other
Yes.
people these kind of things. And from that age, really, it was very much a case of exploring myself and how do I work? Or how does the world work? How does everything work? And it was just that curiosity that over a period of time, over the next number of years in particular, and especially through sort of formal academic studies, led to me being more interested in the human aspect, the human sort of biology and so on, and biology in general, and the sciences in particular in general at that particular stage. So that's what I recall from that sort of moment of 11 years sort of onwards and up to sort of the age of around sort of 22. I continued studying in that particular area, and hence the degree in human anatomy and physiology. And I can tell you quite honestly, even at that particular moment, at 22 years old, where most of my friends had completely planned out their careers, had completely mapped everything out, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Honestly,
What
it
am I
was just,
doing?
I was just interested in reading about the human body, and in fact, even with my degree, I was reading more than I needed to read because I was more interested in knowing more, and especially the latest research into the human anatomy and physiology and the workings of our mind as well. So, so I got to 22 years old, and I've had this kind of almost sort of academic formal education in exploring the self from a gross level, the anatomy, the physiology, the psychology, sort of going into sort of more subtle areas. At 22 years old, I graduated and I had a wonderful time at university. And then I was there, hold on a minute, what am I going to do now? And I've not thought about this next step. Whereas all my friends had gone to work for the great banks, to become lawyers, to become all kinds of, wonderful planned out careers. And it's wonderful. They're wonderful people. And I do recall at that particular time, the banks were chasing me for the student loans and overdrafts, and as you do at that particular point. And I saw a job
Sajid,
advertised.
when are you going to pay back our loan?
Absolutely, and it's
Yes.
sometimes you soon realize in hindsight, life gives you a push in particular directions. Certain things. Now that was one of those pushes. Oh, Saj, you need to find a job somewhere, do something, and otherwise, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably still continue exploring in the areas I wanted to explore. So I saw an advert for Coca Cola as a sales representative at that particular time, and the one thing that stood out at that particular time was, company car, get a company car. Fantastic. I don't even think I read the job description. I think I just saw a company car at that particular time. And to have that mobility and freedom, I thought, wow, I'll apply for the job. And looking back, I have no idea how I got that job because I was not the right kind of candidate for this kind of job.
It just
But
happened.
it honestly, everything I look back in hindsight, I realize I didn't do it. I was just the
It
one.
happened.
It happened, and I still can't explain. I can't write a book on how this happened and how that happened because I have no idea how it happened. I was just there acting it out and going with the flow. So I ended up in the corporate world with Coca Cola for 4 or 5 years there, and then after that with Mars, the chocolate company, for a similar kind of time, and then Associated British Foods, a huge global organization, and spent a total of around 22 years between sort of the three of those. So that's where the bulk of my time was spent. And many people ask me, from 22 to 44 years old in particular, you spent a lot of time in the corporate world for somebody who is interested in the subtleties of the human being, the spirituality. In fact, many of the people I met have been very much against the corporate world, especially when they learn the realities and the truths of,
True.
unfortunately, the private companies and organizations. And it took me time to learn in the early years. Of course, I just delved in and I was myself and learning and enjoying. But later on, I realized the truths behind many of these things. And I rebelled for many years, even though I was working in the corporate world. And yet, in the latter sort of third, I'd say, of my time in the corporate world, I realized if we are to make a difference, then we've got to, sorry to put it this way, we've got to sleep with the enemy. I mean, they're not the enemy, but you know what I mean. The best way to make a difference is to go and put yourself in the place where the chaos
Yes.
is, and share yourself, your presence, whatever you take in there, then you're adding to that. So rather than run away, be in there. And while doing that, it also became a training ground.
Wow.
And for tolerance, for patience, for adaptability, for understanding the different consciousnesses or different expressions of consciousnesses in different people, and so on. And then the compassion develops, the awareness develops of that, and then you soon start realizing actually it's all okay. It's just a playing field for us to express ourselves. And what a great playing field! What a great perfection this is. So that became sort of 22 years, from 22 to 44, and these last number of years, these sort of last 2 or 3 years, is now where things have changed. I've left the corporate world, and now I'm using whatever knowledge, skills I've developed to start from zero again. So
Zero.
I gave everything away, and started from zero. I said, right, okay, this all served me well now. Now it needs to serve somebody else. Give all that away. I'm going to start from zero. I want to face that uncertainty. If there's very little money, very little everything, but can I use my whatever is within that's come out to now create from that 0 point in a way that is very highly conscious. And that then just means to me a lot more than trying to grab money from all over the place in whatever way possible, as we all
Awesome.
do at a certain particular point in our lives. So these last couple of years, I've got involved with recycling, plastic recycling in particular, learned the industry. And now this sort of last 6 months, I've decided to go and start doing some social environmental projects, which involve recycling and also involve children in particular. And I'm bringing in sort of partners to collaborate to form projects. So education partners, various other businesses and people and so on, to come together, form something that then puts back into the world, not necessarily money, there is money involved, but
Yeah.
knowledge, experience, presence, whatever it is that brings this together, this creates this wheel and then generates some momentum, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we share that with others to do similar things. Rather than compete, we cooperate. Hey, this worked for us. You can do it too.
Why
You can
don't
do
you
it.
do
We'll help.
that?
Why don't you do? We're not looking to make loads of money. We'll take our little bit of sustenance. Now you do the same. Sustain yourselves, and we'll support you. And we'll support you. And so it's become a bit like that now. So while I've not really spoken about the spiritual sort of subtleties behind it, you could probably understand what drives this behavior are the spiritual subtleties, that
Yes.
experience in the real
Amazing.
in the playing on the playing ground, as I said. So I often say to people, and two things. I think it was Gandhi who once said it. Yeah, be the example you want to see in the
Yes.
world, and also just in addition to that, I always say, rather than listen to the words, watch the behaviors. The behaviors will reveal all, because when consciousness starts developing, our behaviors naturally change. Nobody needs to tell us what to do. We do it naturally. We don't need an instruction. We don't need anything. Just consciousness is the key in developing that. So leading on to that sort of consciousness side, about 6 years ago, when I started asking the questions, and I'll go back into my sort of teacher basically a little later, but I often used to ask my teacher the question, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? And it was always simple answers like find a gap, get into the gap, clean yourself, see clearly, all will happen, all will change, all will transform. Always the same answers between those three or four. Find the gap. Just be clean and clean yourself. Be clear, see clearly. That's it. I never really knew what it meant. My mind will conjure up ideas, but I never really knew what it meant. So about 6 years ago, I was then inspired to sort of take up photography and
Mhm.
videography, and I started creating photo books.
Wow.
In fact, I created four of them, and one thing, and this will tell you a lot. I've got four photo books. One called "Find the Gap," one called "Bridging the Gap," one called "The Gap of Eden," and one called "Gapless Play." And I've never launched them. never launched them. So they're photo ebooks, as well as there's commentary and words there as well of inspiration with each particular photo. And and I only realized in hindsight why I've never launched them, because as years went by, my teacher said they were for you to refer back to, and for me to learn about the gap and how to find the gap, how the human is the bridge, bridging that gap, how the gap of Eden is the experience that we have, how it is that it's the gapless play from us that we choose how we play on the playing field as a result, and our behaviors change. So it's strange that I've never launched those. It's been 6 years, and I have the books. They've all got their ISBN sort of codes. They've got everything. Everything's ready to launch 6 years ago. But it wasn't there. That feeling wasn't there. This is not necessarily for the public. This is for me to reflect back upon. It might be later on.
Maybe in future you might make
Correct,
it available to the world.
correct,
Maybe.
and absolutely, and that I think I'm now. This is the moment in my life now. I'm getting led to now sharing.
Yes.
I've been very private, been very quiet, been very much in my own kind of, in some ways, how can I share until I know myself?
Okay.
And I know that's not necessarily the right way, because often through sharing we learn and evolve as well, very, very quickly.
Yes, even I resonate with that thought that as we are evolving, we can also share it with others and help simultaneously. It can happen.
Correct, absolutely. And I think that's what I'm feeling more and more of now. So it's
Yes.
interesting that you called me and you're asking me to share sort of my own story. But that's where Find the Gap came when I turned around 40 years old. That's where it specifically sort of started becoming a big thing in my life. And it was my teacher who guided me through all that. And in essence, if I kind of can explain Find the Gap very, very simply using the mind and words, it's, I describe it in some way as almost like a storm, a cyclone, a hurricane. Imagine that. And the gap is the eye of the storm, right in the center, the still point. It's where the observer sits, the soul, the seat of the soul. Imagine a 360 degrees lens around there, being a still point where the lens is clear, the lens of the intellect is clear, and you can see clearly absolutely everywhere of this and that, physical, the non-physical, not necessarily seen but felt.
See,
And and that's to me that is a gap, and that's how it was kind of explained to me. That's how I sort of experienced it. And the swirling winds are the forces of creation, the playing field, whatever. But they all start at that gap, and then
yeah.
as soon as that singularity becomes a duality of two forces, we start spinning and spinning and spinning, and we start creating through spinning. And as a famous Rumi said, you're spinning out of nothingness, we come. and, and many other great masters have said similar kind of things. So that's probably the way I put it. I put it as the still point of observation while participating at the same time in the storm.
Wow.
At the same
So
time.
there is a being and doing happening at the same time.
Correct. And the becoming conscious of that, consciously aware of that, we experience our totality as much as we can do. And as we do that, we become like a child again. We think, wow, there's a lot.
That makes
anything,
sense now.
anything is possible. Anything. It's like taking some plasticine and saying, I can make anything with this. and, by using this instrument of experience and creation that we've put together. I just see it very much like a mobile phone or anything like that. It just captures, it perceives, displays, experiences, and transmits out.
Yes.
That's all it does, and then we replace it with a newer model
Yes,
some
yes.
other time.
What can be there a better tool than this, Sajid?
Absolutely.
Right?
No, we're creating. We get we get so excited about all the little creations that we create as human beings, whether it's phones and advanced technology, and it's all wonderful, wonderful. How often do we look at this? And this is, I think, where my studies on human anatomy, physiology, psychology were just absolutely wonderful, because I think we don't even know that much. We're eating food, and I'm conscious of what I'm eating. I actively make an effort to eat willingly with intent of certain types of food and so on. It goes in. I've got no idea then really what happens. Yeah, I've got it's a mass intelligence that is just taking over,
Yes.
of recreating, transforming, and doing whatever. I can think it through, however I like. I could do scientific experiments to explain tiny little bits of it, but the vastness of it, I have no idea. And until we understand that, the vastness of it, we have no idea, then becomes a real exploration, a fun, a treasure hunt. What a real scientist should be like, as in exploring the vastness and being open to everything else. So in some ways, hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea. And I guess when
Yes.
people do ask me, what can we do, Saj, to live a better life, enhance our
Fine.
lives, have a better experience, I do just say to them, find the gap, find the observation point. I can help you. I can show you how to get there slowly, gradually. But then beyond then, you will get your own answers.
Okay. Right.
So
So, Sajid, conceptually, I got a fair idea about what you mean by how you landed up with the Find the Gap program.
mhm,
So, is it an online training, or is it a live training, or is it one to one? You use it for coaching, or like application part? See, yes, I understood conceptual to some extent.
mhm.
Yeah. What is the application part? What do you do with this now?
Well, as I said at the beginning, you've come to a really good point in us two meeting, because we're at this real sort of turning, not a turning point. How would I say it? A starting point, I would say,
Okay.
of of the application. itself. Because before this particular point, it's been my exploration, experiencing, and training of
With
it,
self.
and of course with friends, families, and other people, work colleagues, and through work, experimented and
Mhm.
learned and experimented and learned and experimented and learned and so on. And now it's only got to this point where I've become so convinced that it's so simple that it's so complicated for people. that and so I've started. You've probably seen on YouTube. I've started to develop a few little things to experiment, short snippets of little inspirations. But what's going to lead on from this are some short meditations or
Okay.
exercises to get us into a meditative state and
Awesome.
into that gap. So, and I'm going to keep it very, very simple because one of the things that our mind gets too distracted with is too much uh, difference. There's nothing wrong with variety, beautiful variety. It's all wonderful. But if we become addicted to variety too much, then we're constantly looking for the next hit, the next hit, the next hit. So the message is going to be very much, it's the real magic is in its simplicity and to apply it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there are three meditations that I'll be over the next sort of month or two. I will be putting onto YouTube, and then there will be a website, and then there will be the PDF sort of books to also give away for free. I just want people to just want to share these with people, and you'll start seeing over this next year, my 47th year, and that's what I was told it would be the 47th year
Okay.
that it will all start to develop, and hopefully people, I could share it with people, and it will help, and if anything helps even one person, before I go, good enough for me, and
Beautiful.
I'm happy with that.
Lovely, Sajid. Though it was like, you have simplified out of, say, a person's journey from the age of 11,
Mhm.
and then the way you have uh, come up with this name, Find the Gap, and then linking with meditation or spirituality in the simplest form, simplifying the complex to simplicity. It was a beautiful learning. Like, I'm sure it's gonna make difference in a lot of lives.
Hope so. I really do hope so. And that is really the message. The message really is um, life can be very simple. In that still point, it's just pure simplicity. However, we can enjoy the complexity while being sat in the simplicity at the same time. They're both
Yes.
wonderful. This complexity is just the creation evolving from that simplicity, the
Yeah.
everything from the nothingness, whatever we want to call it, we can call it. But actually, it's a total experience. It's a wholeness
True.
experience. It's
True.
not about choosing between this or that. It's actually how do we live the totality in an essence that connects. Well, we're all connected. It's just a realization of our connectedness, of everything's connectedness,
Excellent.
as one. But that simplicity allows that eye to open to enjoy the complexity.
Wonderful. Wonderful. It was awesome, Sajid, because this, though it's a short and sweet conversation,
Hmm.
yet let the world know about different experts, different modalities, like what people are doing, what's happening in the world of therapy, in the world of spirituality, in the world of coaching. So that is the reason when you ask me, like, "Nizam, what's the outcome and what is the purpose?" So this is my purpose. Let world know at one place, like, hey, these are the people who are doing making difference in lives. So thank
Wonderful,
you very
wonderful,
much once
absolutely
again, Sajid.
wonderful. Thank you very much. Honestly, I can sense the energy from yourself,
Thank
and
you.
I know you are going to do wonderful things with these things. So, any point, if I can be of any assistance, of any help,
Sure.
please, you know where I am. And I wish you really, really well. I really wish you success in this, in helping so many people out.
Thank you, Sajid. Thank you once again. Bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
You too. Bye.